All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. We're about to kick off what's likely to be a really, really busy week for the equity markets. A couple of big things to think about here that are sort of somewhat breaking, but it's not just that they're breaking news. It's really more around the fact that these are things that a lot of investors, especially those who sort of watch shows on YouTube, who are invested in dividends, who are invested in index funds, this affects you in a big way. It's something to be aware of. So please, if you don't typically watch or you're not following on a regular basis, we encourage you to subscribe. We're always putting these out and trying to get some content that's not necessarily covered the same way by other channels. And if you don't mind, please like the video. So let's pop right on in. This is our third episode of our Sunday night live takes as far as what we're looking at for the week and things we're paying attention to. So as usual, we're going to cover three topics tonight. We're going to talk about Microsoft buying or trying to buy or in advanced talks to buy Nuance. We're also going to understand that Powell came out recently, said it's highly unlikely to see this. And also, let's take a quick look at where stock futures are at the moment. So without further ado, let's jump in. Really big news. Microsoft is in advanced talks to buy Nuance. It is likely, or at least we believe it is likely, this could happen tomorrow, Monday. This is at this time if you're watching this live. And this is a big deal because Nuance is really all about understanding voice recognition and voice patterns. So this has a huge, huge application within Microsoft's larger go-to-market around business-to-business intelligence, especially around sort of that B2B marketplace and for the government sector as well. This is a particularly big deal because as Microsoft continues to work under Azure, as well as working on their AI and machine learning capabilities, the addition of Nuance for speech recognition really furthers expand what they're already doing from the voice rec perspective. So as of the last numbers that we saw, and this is what we know from a public perspective at least, Microsoft is looking or at least offering to buy Nuance for around $16 billion. This represents a current premium of Nuance's stock price of about 23 to 25%, depending on the most recent numbers. So this is a really big deal because Microsoft is a huge player for most dividend holders. If you have index funds, mutual funds, you're in tech in any capacity, you're in the S&P, QQQ, there's some chance that you are exposed to Microsoft in general. It's just good to be aware that this could be something that could be very positive for them long term from an aggregate revenue perspective. But sometimes when large acquisitions take place, especially notable acquisitions like Nuance, for example, here, there could be some degree of dip in price. This doesn't mean it's permanent. It doesn't mean you have to worry about it. But if you're sitting on Microsoft purely for dividends, being aware of what this means and what they're paying could be a big piece of this. Not that I believe it's going to create pressure on those dividends, but just something to be aware of that this is now going to be something from an equity perspective that they're trying to get done. The next big thing, once again, we're always talking about rates. Fed Chief Powell came out and basically said he believes it is highly unlikely that they'll be raising rates this year. This is really, excuse me, this is really sort of a big thing because that kind of direction this early on in the year, it helps to stabilize the markets, helps us to give some sort of idea of what we can expect in the near term. Now, this isn't to say that it's a perfect scenario where we can't predict what might change or what could happen. But for what it's worth right now, knowing that and having him come out and say it does provide some degree of, hey, look, we're trying to get things to stabilize. We know there's a lot going on. Home prices are huge right now. It seems like homes are hitting the market and selling within a first week is what I'm hearing. And these kind of things help to stabilize, help to give some direction, help us to make decisions as investors to know that, like, look, if they're not going to be raising rates, we should have some degree of expectations as far as where the market can go. Yes, we're still working through the pandemic. Yes, we're still working through vaccinations. Yes, we're going to have tons of PE activity. We're going to have tons of M&A this year. But this is at least one piece of the market that all of us as investors and traders can at least stand back and say, hey, for the moment, he believes it's highly unlikely we're going to see rates rise. This is good to know. And just, the last thing tonight, we'll keep it pretty short, is we're looking at stock futures are slipping as of right now. This doesn't mean that won't turn around by the morning, but we did hit some record highs last week and on Friday as well. So it's not it's not a surprise to me to see that there'll be somewhat of a dip after hitting that, because just to give some perspective on this, whenever you see markets hit record highs, it's very common for people to start to take some of that profit out. That profit removal is going to create some downward selling pressure, obviously, as people take their profits. So just be aware of that anytime you go into a Monday morning and you're not sure what the markets might do. There can be a little bit of movement up or down, depending on what it looks like. But I always like to look at the futures as an indicator of what's going to happen the next day. So that's it. These are the three big things I'm going into my Monday morning with. Futures are looking a little bit low. Not surprised, because we had a big finish to the week with some record highs. Powell came out and said it's highly unlikely he's going to see rates rise this year or that they're going to raise rates. I think this is also really good information from an indicator perspective as to what I want to think about and how I want to go after my investments for the next few months here. And then the biggest thing, and this could happen tomorrow, it's sort of a big event in the market if it does. Microsoft is looking and is in advanced talks to buy Nuance. This could happen tomorrow for $16 billion, a 23% or so premium above that current stock price for Nuance. So that's it. I hope you have a great trading week. I hope that you take some of this into account when you're thinking about where you're putting your money, how you're investing it, what kind of investments you're making. I talk about hedging and protecting your downside all the time. I think that this is a really good opportunity to say it one more time. The reason I try to take these looks in the market is I want to just get a grasp of what is likely to happen right through the weekend when I'm planning out my week. What can happen from a positive or negative perspective. Sometimes it's about Suez canals being blocked. Sometimes it's about Microsoft making a big buy. But whatever the case is, it's important that you understand it. You understand how it impacts your portfolio. But most importantly, I think it's really important to understand your own personal psychology as to how you go to market around these kinds of news events. And what I would say more than anything is it's particularly important to understand that these different kinds of things have disparate impacts on the market, right? We see this a lot where one huge company buys another company and the price goes down. But maybe it's not because it's a bad fit, but maybe it just people know it's going to take a long time to earn that money back or get that equity back into shape. So only reason for bringing that up is I always urge you to do your own research. Think about these things you're hearing and how it could affect your portfolio. And other than that, have a good night. Start the week off right. And let's get it. Let's have another good week. Thanks, everybody.